Almost exactly 100 years on from the sinking of the Titanic, another luxury cruise liner is on course for disaster.
And I was just like, I'm going to die. I was like, Joe, you're not coming out of this one.
Looking behind us, the ship was coming down behind us.
People were ringing home and telling their loved ones that they loved them in case they weren't going to be seeing them again.
Combining expert testimony with survivors' own mobile phone footage, this is the minute-by-minute story of what really happened on board the Costa Concordia.
Everyone was saying, oh my God, what's going on? I was like, I have no idea what's going on. The mothers were chucking their babies at my boyfriend. He had like 3 babies in his arm and he doesn't know where to put them.
I literally felt exactly like the Titanic. What you see on the film Titanic, that's what I was relating it to.
This film reveals the mistakes that were made and how, in the 21st century, such a tragedy could occur. It's 8:40 p.m. on Friday the 13th of January. There are 4,252 passengers and crew on board, 35 of them British. Enjoying dinner at the restaurant Roma on deck 4 and on their 7th cruise are retired teachers Derek and Viv Ebbage.
Magnificent, it's beautiful. The architecture and the decor are just stunning, you know. Everywhere you go is a different type of room. But the atrium went up 8 or 9 stories.
There's a certain element of luxury to it.
The Costa Concordia is one of Europe's largest cruise liners. Situated around its 1,500 cabins are 4 swimming pools, 5 restaurants, 13 bars, a casino, and one of the world's largest on-board luxury spas. Entertaining the passengers is a group of young dancers from the UK. Among them is 20-year-old Kirsty Cheslin-Nuttall. She has been performing at sea for 4 months.
We had 2 shows, Time and Celebration, and we'd do them twice a night.
The dancers' cabins are located next to each other on the ship's lower decks. Life on board is a home away from home.
We had bunk beds in our cabin. All the way down the corridor, we had dancers and technicians as well. So it was everyone that worked together, stayed together.
Fellow dancer Joe Stribley has had to overcome his fears to pursue his dream of working on board ship.
Well, I'm petrified of the sea. If I go into the sea, as soon as my feet can't touch the floor, that's it, I have to get out. That's always like my worst fear, to be stuck out at sea or like drowning.
The ship has set out from Civitavecchia, near Rome, on a 7-day cruise around the Mediterranean.
Very good evening and welcome aboard the Costa Concordia.
In command of the 13-story supercruiser is the captain, Francesco Schettino. At 51, Schettino is one of the youngest skippers sailing with the Costa Line.
We'd sometimes see the captain on board and he'd walk past and we'd say hello to each other.
I saw the captain when I first came on board. He just seemed like quite a sociable, happy sort of man.
Some of the cast were quite close with the captain himself, and he bought us drinks. He actually offered the girls to wear some dresses for him on gala nights because of his friend's a designer.
9 p.m. The captain is mingling with passengers.
We were at dinner and I suddenly said, oh look, the captain's just come in. And he sat down with a lady to my right. So we left the dining room at 9 o'clock. They were still there.
International safety regulations stipulate that passengers must undergo an emergency drill within 24 hours of boarding ship. Its purpose is to help the passengers identify their allocated muster stations, where the lifeboats are situated. On the Concordia, the lifeboats run along both sides of deck 4.
Every 2 weeks we'd have a boat drill, which is where we'd practice getting to our master stations, practicing our roll call.
I was always like, it's all well and good doing these drills, and I was like, but in a real emergency, we don't know how we're going to act. No one does.
The next drill is scheduled for the following day. Crucially, this means that anyone boarding at the last port hasn't been shown what to do in the event of an emergency. "9:40 p.m. Back from dinner, the captain is now on the bridge. The ship is heading northwest, on a course between the mainland and the island of Giglio, 10 miles offshore. Its official route keeps it in the middle of the channel, where the water is at its deepest. But as the ship nears Giglio, it turns off course, heading towards the island's shore in a maneuver known as a sail-by, or salute. It's a detour that will claim at least 17 lives. The ship's port side hits an outcrop of rock that the captain will later claim was not on his map.
It was just sort of relaxing. I was laying on my front and it went this way, and I was really holding on tight. And then I could hear like around me, like all glasses and bottles and that from everyone else's cabin just sort of falling and smashing, and then all my doors were opening and I was like, what is going on?
There was a bump, a crash and a bang and a scraping noise. The ship juddered and my chair just went about 4 feet that way. And Viv and the chap next to her were hanging onto the table.
Immediately after the impact, a passenger in the dining room starts filming the chaos.
Me and my friend looked at each other and we said, that doesn't feel right. And we could see all the cabin stewards' trolleys all falling over, and they were running after them.
I grabbed the wall, grabbed the seat, and I was like, okay, something's seriously wrong. And then we'd reached such a tilt, and then the vibrations just sent me out into the floor.
And I was like panicking. I was going, what is going on?
The luxury cruise liner Costa Concordia has torn a hole in its side and is on thousands of tons of water. There are more than 4,000 people on board. It's the moment all captains dread.
That you would get that awful sinking feeling in your heart that something dreadful has happened, and now you've got to start trying to make the best of a recovery.
On board, everyone reacts differently. Their precise locations will have a significant impact on whether or not they will get out alive. On deck 3 is dancer Kirsty.
First of all, we went on a tilt, and normally on a rocky night, that'd be normal. We'd just go back the other way. But this time it stayed there, and it made a bumping, like doo-doo-doo-doo-doo noise, and we kind of looked at each other and we were like, oh, that was a bit weird. We were told to just stay, because until we get an order from the captain, we're not meant to do anything.
Joe Stribley senses that something is terribly wrong.
I rang my mum and I was like bawling my eyes out on the phone. I was just like, Mum, something's going wrong. And I was like panicking, shouting, straight down the phone like Mum, I'm in the middle of the scene. She was like, okay, calm down.
Holidaymakers Derek and Viv have stayed in the restaurant.
We were just sort of sitting there
Left
waiting
in
for something
limbo.
to happen.
We hadn't been told to get life jackets, and we sat calmly together with our 2 American friends and just sat on the couch.
10 minutes after impact. Blackout. The moment is captured on a passenger's mobile phone.
On behalf of the captain, to inform you that due to an electrical fault which is currently under control, we're currently in a blackout. Our technicians are working to resolve the situation and we'll inform you of developments as they occur. Thank you for your attention.
They were telling us that it would be okay, so my friends got their laptops and we were all sat in the corridor watching films and waiting for the time when they said, oh, it's all okay, you can head back to your cabins. So we were unaware completely.
15 minutes after the collision, Captain Scatino radios the ship's owners to say that there is a problem. The ship continues forward as the crew try to assess the damage. The rocks have torn a massive 50-metre gash in the port side. The lower decks of modern cruise liners are typically divided into 7 watertight compartments. The ships are designed to remain afloat if 2 compartments are breached. But, in an echo of the Titanic, it's believed that the Concordia has breached 3 compartments. The engine room is breached too.
The way I read the situation was they thought this is quite serious, turned round and started to come back in towards the land again in order to minimise the amount of distance between the shore and the ship in order to effect a more realistic rescue.
10 p.m. The Concordia turns around and heads for land.
Very soon after hitting the rocks, it would have been prudent for the captain to start the assembly process. Every second can literally make the difference between life and death.
The passengers are not informed of any impending emergency.
If you felt you had been holed and it was a fairly large hole, you would be thinking very quickly about sounding general alarm signals because you would want to get the passengers to their emergency station sooner rather than later.
Making their way to their suite on deck 6, honeymoon couple Ian and Janice Donoff are concerned by the tilting of the ship.
We saw people going down the stairs with their life jackets on because all the lifts weren't working. And so we thought, get our life jackets out from where we knew they were stored and decide what to do.
80 miles away on the Italian mainland, the Coast Guard are notified of the emergency, but not by the captain.
We received news of an emergency situation on the ship from the passengers themselves. They were worried because there had been a blackout, and so they started to call family and friends, as well as the police. We immediately passed this information over to the Livorno Coast Guard.
Hundreds of passengers begin gathering on deck 4.
A nome del nostro comandante, le chiediamo gentilmente di tornare alla vostra cabina o se desiderate essere in giro per il salone. Una volta che noi abbiamo finito di sistemare il problema che abbiamo, il problema elettrico del generatore, tutto sarà calma. Per quello che abbiamo questa luce di emergenza, è tutto sotto controllo. Va bene? Se desiderate rimanere qui in piedi va bene pure, ma io vi chiedo gentilmente di andare in camera e stare tranquilli seduti.
But the situation is far from under control.
when you give people false information or you tell people, you hold back key information, that's what can lead to confusion, and that's what can lead to complacency in the passengers as well.
As the Concordia approaches the island, it's clear that she is too big for the harbour. The Coast Guard calls the ship.
Buonasera, flotta Concordia. Cortesemente, avete dei problemi a bordo voi? Sì, affermativo, abbiamo un blackout a bordo e stiamo verificando le condizioni. Hanno ricevuto una telefonata di un parente di un marittimo che diceva durante il pranzo gli è cascato tutto in testa. No, negativo, abbiamo un blackout e stiamo verificando le condizioni a bordo. Affermativo, stand by sul 16, vi teniamo informati.
We contacted the captain of the ship. His answer was, there is a blackout on board, but the situation is under control.
The ship is now listing to port at almost 20 degrees. Finally, the captain issues a general emergency on board.
And I was like, I don't believe it. I was like, it's general emergency. And I was like, this isn't a drill.
We all ran to our cabins. We had to get pens. It's the least worries, but we were all going, we need a pen, because at our master stations, as dancers, we have a duty to do roll call for the crew.
The passengers must now assemble on the lifeboat deck, but not all of them have undergone a safety drill.
We're just rushing around, everyone's saying, oh my God, what's going on? I was like, I have no idea what's going on. Like, I can just remember seeing like the crew members' faces like all shocked because no one expected it. It's not like, yeah, everyone was just so confused and everyone's faces were just so scared and like frightened.
Amelia joins the crowds on deck 4, waiting for instruction. Her boyfriend is a ship's engineer. He's from the engine room with news.
He was like, Amelia, it's really bad, like we're going to have to abandon the boat, it's flooding with water. And then that's when I got really quite scared. But obviously the passengers had no idea what was going on at the time.
Ladies and gentlemen, your attention please. The situation is under control, please remain calm. But at this time, to your master station. They're located outside on deck 4. Please remain calm, the situation is under control.
Dancer Rose Metcalf meets a crew member with some alarming news.
He had been in the engine room and he told me that the tower had gone along 3 compartments and he had looked at the hole which was flooding the engine room, and he said he'd waited there until the water had reached his waist. But all the engineers and the plumbers and technicians looked at each other at this point and they all agreed that there was nothing they could do at this point, that deck 0 had flooded. This means that the ship is sinking.
Water is breaking into the public decks.
My master station is the other side of the ship from my cabin, so I had a good 20-minute walk. I had to try and make my way through the crowd, and it was so slippery on the floor that my shoes just kept going from under me and I was slipping over, and everyone was picking me back up, and I was like, it's going to be okay, to all the passengers. I mean, I was terrified.
The passengers don't know it yet, but the ship is about to hit land for the 2nd time. The 300-metre-long cruise ship comes to rest on an underwater rock shelf. Immediately on contact, she begins tilting violently to starboard. It's 10:58. Now comes the call that no ship's passenger ever wants to hear.
We got an announcement to abandon ship, and that started to get folk really worried, and there was an immediate panic.
Il bambino qua, piccolino! Abandoning a ship can be quite a dangerous thing to do. Boarding lifeboats, getting passengers in lifeboats, lowering lifeboats, these are not things that are done lightly.
The Coast Guard scrambles 2 rescue helicopters. Estimated flying time to the Concordia, 50 minutes. Power losses across the ship add to the terror.
Everyone was like panicking, when there was a blackout, screams, everyone just screaming. It's just like literally felt exactly like the Titanic, or what you see on the film Titanic. That's what I was relating it to.
Panic took place when they opened the Getty lifeboats. Meanwhile, the tilting got worse in the opposite direction. So on our side, which was the side which was up out of the water, the angle was getting quite acute.
Hundreds of people are crowding onto lifeboats.
People were just trying to push and shove, like the mothers were chucking their babies at my boyfriend. He had like 3 babies in his arm and he doesn't know where to put them.
Amelia's lifeboat reaches safe water.
And we looked behind us and like all the water had flooded and all the cabins had gone down in the water. And we were like, oh my God, this is awful.
Thousands are still on board. On the starboard side, retirees Derek and Viv have made it to their designated lifeboat, but they are in for a shock.
They were stopping people getting in. You know, people crushed up against the rails and trying to get in. So we're full. And somehow somebody said to me, "Oh, try something like try the other side." The other side is, I don't know, 50 metres across, maybe more. And we're now walking up a deck like this.
Quite a steep slope.
Quite a steep slope, walking up to get to the other side.
Scrambling across a listing ship with no assistance, Derek and Viv managed to make their way to the opposite side of the Concordia.
But the same position was there, the lifeboats were full.
All full. No room here. You go along the length of the ship and no, they're all full.
Every single lifeboat had left. There were just bits of rope dangling. You think we've had an excellent life.
A listing ship makes launching lifeboats exceptionally difficult. They're designed to deploy up to an angle of 20 degrees. If the ship tips over further than this, lowering them into the sea can become impossible. Newly married couple Ian and Janice have made it to a lifeboat on the raised port side.
Everybody was scrambling to get onto a lifeboat. We managed to get on. They tried to get us away. They couldn't. They tried using oars to physically push the lifeboat away from the side of the ship, and it wasn't possible.
Kirsty watches the evacuation in horror.
They were coming down, and because we were on such a lean, they were just swinging in like this. And when they were still coming down, and everyone was going, put it back up, put it back up. And then it would hit the side of the balcony. Bearing in mind there's people in there, and the screams and the noise of the banging was just horrible. That will always stay. That was scarring.
And eventually they said, you'll have to get off.
Ian and Janice stepped back onto the sinking ship.
The ship was tilting much more. As I got off, I couldn't walk straight.
That's when I heard this creaking sound, and, you know, the ship was, turning over more. We didn't know what to do.
People were ringing home and telling their loved ones that they loved them in case they weren't going to be seeing them again. I did actually think at that point, it's like Titanic. But I thought it's not like being in a film, this is real life.
Dancer James Thomas has been helping passengers make it to the lifeboats. Only now does he board one himself.
When I finally got into the lifeboat, I looked back at the ship and I had this overwhelming feeling of that was my home for 5 months, and like everything was on there. My life was, to watch it slowly going down into oblivion. It's heartbreaking. But
on deck 4, Kirsty and Joe are attempting to make their escape. The ship is tilting over into the sea, preventing them from reaching their crew life rafts.
I remember one of the guys who said, "Oh look, the moon," and we were watching it because the ship was coming up to the moon, and he was like, look, it's disappearing. The moon was just going under the ship. The stairwell just to the right started filling up with water, bearing in mind this is deck 3. All I could think to myself was, that water is so blue. I was just watching it fill up thinking, wow, it's pretty.
It was just getting lower and lower, and I was just like, okay. I was like, all right, yeah, I'm gonna die. I was like, I'm gonna die.
And I just think, we're sinking, this is it.
It's 11:30 p.m. 2 Coast Guard rescue helicopters approach the island of Giglio in search of the stricken Costa Concordia. What follows is a recording of the actual conversation between the 2 pilots. The images are taken from the helicopter's onboard infrared camera.
Vai a sinistra, sinistra. Vai. 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 Guarda un po' quali che cos'è? Alberto! No, non era quella, scusa. Più grossa ancora.
At first, we were clearly expecting to find a ship skewed by a couple of degrees, still sailing and with lights on. But as we approached, we couldn't see anything.
Sarà qua dietro, perché...
Sarà là dietro, sì.
È questa!
Guarda dov'è?
Eccola qui!
Picchia affondata!
Porco cane!
Inside the Concordia, hundreds of stranded passengers are searching for a way out. No working lifeboats remain.
People slipping over everywhere. It was mad. Like, it was horrible.
There is little sign of a coordinated evacuation on board.
The worst situation that could happen for the passengers on board is if they lose confidence in the very people that are supposed to be managing the entire evacuation process. The people that are managing the evacuation process need to be seen and perceived to be in control, to have information at their disposal that's going to help the passengers.
The ship is now listing heavily to the starboard side. Dancers Joe and Kirsty, located towards the rear of the ship, can only watch as the water level rises.
I was saying, please, 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 please. I was saying, I'm not ready to die.
Together, they decide their only way out is to jump for it.
I was quite high up on the ship, and that was level with water, and I was just like, I just remember watching it. It's heartbreaking. Like, everyone was looking at each other, going, "Take care." Like, "I love you. Take care." And I was just like, "I'm gonna die." My biggest fear ever of dying, and I was like, "That's how I had to go." And I was just like, "I'll give it a go," but I was like, "Joe, you're not coming out of this one."
We all just then looked at each other, and we thought, this is going to be it.
And I just jumped in and I just went like mad, swimming.
I watched him jump, and then I just followed him afterwards. We didn't even think about it, just ran and jumped.
It was absolutely freezing, but that was the last thing on my mind. It didn't go through my mind. I was just like, what could be under the water? Like, obviously I'm so petrified of the sea, but I was just literally swimming. I was just like, As for me, I was like, if I die, I die. I was preparing myself for it, and I was waiting for it to happen.
And then the swim. It was so much hard work, and I had my phone and my purse in my hand, clinging onto them. I don't want to lose these.
People were shouting, "Do not look back!" And then I was so knackered, I had to go onto my back and swim. And all you can see is just these lights, like they're not, that typical light from the Titanic, the typical deep echo noise, and of all the metal like breaking off, like so that noise will not leave. It's like.
It takes them 20 minutes to reach the island's rocky shoreline.
I started to climb up, but I slipped. And I was thinking, I'm not going back in that water, no way. And I tried to pull myself up. And there was a local villager who'd come down, and she was stood there waiting to drag people up, and she grabbed my hand and pulled me up.
Retired couple Derek and Viv Ebbage are also on Concordia's starboard side. The lifeboats are all gone.
The water is lapping now onto deck 3 because of the tilt of the boat. That's focuses the mind somewhat. And then, to our great amazement and delight, a lifeboat returned.
In the rush to board the lifeboat, they become separated.
I slipped over, and then Viv was several meters ahead, and then I couldn't see her. And that was the most frightening thing, I think, because I thought, well, where's she gone now? Has she slipped over? I did not know if Viv was in this lifeboat, or perhaps in another one alongside, or whether she'd slipped into the water. You know, I don't normally allow her out on her own.
I was right down out of the way, and I thought, I wonder where Derek is. I hope he's on this boat. I wonder where he is. And then the voice said, "Viv!" as he does. And I turned round and there he was.
I managed to see her right down in the back of the boat and just spotted her white hair. It was absolutely heaving. But fair enough, we were going to be safe.
On the port side, towards the prow of the Concordia, dancer Rose has climbed up to the highest point of the ship.
There was one point where there were windows and I was climbing down free-handed just with my fingertips, with my whole body weight. And, you know, the drop below would have instantly been my end. So I was manoeuvring myself to a position where I could be rescued from. We were waiting and we could hear helicopters, but then it became apparent to us that they couldn't find us. And it was a very, very long time, at least more than an hour, that they were scouring, and I could see them shining their light on life jackets that were floating in the water.
My colleagues noticed that there were two lights, two strobes near the bow, close to the command bridge. In fact, we found two people who were trapped underneath the command bridge with no way out. Between the two helicopter commanders, it was decided that I would be the one to go down.
So the guy came down and I took my life jacket off and he looped under my arms.
In order to winch her off, I put this special harness, which we call a horse collar, under her armpits and round her back. Then I secured it around her.
And I was winched up into the helicopter. There was one point when I looked down, but I realised how free I was. If I'd have lifted my arms up, I would have dropped. And I was literally holding onto this man with my own arms, and he had his legs wrapped around me, and that was what was holding me at this great height above this sinking ship.
It's 1:46 a.m., 4 hours after the Concordia struck the first rock. Hundreds of passengers remain on board. 80 miles to the north, in Livorno, the Coast Guard places a radio call to Captain Schettino. But Schettino is not on the bridge. He is in a lifeboat.
Senta, io sono De Falco da Livorno, parlo col comandante?
Sì, buonasera, comandante Falco.
Mi dica il suo nome, per favore.
Il comandante Schettino, comandante.
Schettino?
Sì.
Ascolti, Schettino. Ci sono persone intrappolate a bordo, adesso lei va con la sua scialuppa sotto la prua della nave, lato dritto, c'è una biscaggina. Lei sale su quella biscaggina e va a bordo della nave. Va a bordo della nave e mi viene a dire, mi riporta quante persone ci sono. Le è chiaro? Io sto registrando questa comunicazione, comandante Schettino.
Allora, comandante, le dico una cosa.
Parli a voce alta.
Allora, la nave adesso, io sono qua di fronte...
Comandante, parli a voce più alta, metta la mano davanti al microfono e parla a voce alta. Chiaro?
Con la scialuppa, fallo venire un attimo, fallo venire qua. Fallo venire qua. Comandante, allora, in questo momento la nave è inclinata.
Ho capito. C'è gente, ascolti, c'è gente che sta scendendo dalla biscaggina di prua. Lei quella biscaggina la percorre in senso inverso, sale sulla nave e mi dice quante persone e che cosa hanno a bordo, chiaro? Mi dice se ci sono bambini, donne o persone bisognose di assistenza e me ne dice il numero di ciascuna di queste categorie. È chiaro? Guardi Schettino che lei si è salvato forse dal mare, ma io la porto veramente molto male, le faccio passare l'anima dei guai. Vado a bordo.
In all my time at sea, I've never heard a captain in a way been spoken to in that manner. But I think the guy from the Coast Guard realised that perhaps the captain was near breaking point, the strain and stress of the whole situation, and therefore you have to speak to them in a very firm, very positive way to get them to respond.
Che sta facendo, comandante?
Sto qua per coordinare i soccorsi.
Che sta coordinando lì? Vado a bordo, mi coordini i soccorsi da bordo. Lei si rifiuta?
No, non mi sto rifiutando.
Lei si sta rifiutando di andare a bordo, comandante?
No, ci sto andando.
E mi dica qual è il motivo per cui non ci va.
Ci sto andando perché ci sta l'altra lancia che si è fermata.
Lei vada a bordo, è un ordine. Lei non deve fare altre valutazioni. Lei ha dichiarato l'abbandono nave. Adesso comando io. Lei vada a bordo. È chiaro?
Comandante.
Non mi sente?
Sto andando a bordo.
Vada. Mi chiami immediatamente da bordo. C'è il mio aerosoccorritore lì.
Dove sta il tuo soccorritore?
Il mio soccorritore sta a prua. Avanti. Ci sono già dei cadaveri, Schettino. Avanti.
Quanti cadaveri ci sono?
Non lo so. Uno l'ho sentito. Me lo devi dire lei quanti ce ne sono, Cristo.
Ma ti rende conto che è buio e che qua non vediamo nulla?
E che vuole tornare a casa, Schettino? È buio, vuole tornare a casa? Salga sulla prua della nave tramite la biscaggina e mi dica cosa si può fare, quante persone ci sono e che bisogno hanno. Ora!
There's no evidence that Captain Schettino attempted to reboard the Concordia. In the early hours of the morning, after his radio conversation with the Coast Guard, he took a minicab to a local hotel, where he would give this interview to an Italian news crew.
Si dice che il comandante sia l'ultimo a lasciare la nave. Com'è andata, comandante?
Siamo stati gli ultimi ad abbandonare la nave. Bisogna anche in un momento particolare avere il potere decisionale e capire con freddezza qual è l'alternativa migliore, come infatti credo che quasi tutti sono stati tratti in salvo.
On the ship, hundreds of passengers remain in deadly peril. Among them, Ian and Janice Donoff.
People were pushing past us, hanging on for dear life. Ian said to me, if the ship goes down, we won't survive.
"4:35 a.m. Beached on an underwater reef, the Costa Concordia is now almost completely horizontal. Ian and Janice Donoff are trapped inside.
Somebody found an electrician's ladder and propped it up to what is the large viewing porthole that you have on the outer part of this corridor. But that was virtually like on your ceiling, many feet above. And if somebody hadn't found that ladder, you know, we wouldn't stand a chance.
By the time we got onto the hull, the rope ladder was already there and people were going down it.
It went about 5 stories high. when you first start that journey. And it's amazing how people actually didn't slip or didn't fall. And that was absolutely unbelievable.
As you got to the bottom of the rope,
They've actually hauled you in. They grab your legs, they hauled you in.
Then the other to guide you the last few steps, and then they suddenly pulled and said, let go, and pulled you onto their dinghy.
Dawn. With first light comes the opportunity for rescue teams to enter the Costa Concordia. Believing that some trapped passengers and crew may still be alive in underwater air pockets, Navy divers prepare to explore the submerged ship.
You can imagine the chaos that we found inside. All sorts of objects strewn everywhere. This makes things very difficult. All the debris collects in the corners where you need to walk. We came across a lot of blood on board. We are looking for bodies. It isn't nice, but we are used to it. It's our job. Personally, when I found the body underwater, I think to myself that it's only sleeping.
The captain, Francesco Schettino, is arrested. His employers, Costa Cruises, immediately blame him for the disaster.
In this particular case, the captain decided to change the route.
Schettino's legal team blames Costa. They say Costa told him to change course and salute the island as a publicity exercise. The official inquiry will take months to reach its conclusion, but already several key questions are high on the agenda.
The sequence of events would indicate that mistakes were made during the whole process. First was not following a proper passage plan.
If Captain Schettino had stuck to his course, the ship would not have hit the rock in shallow waters. Lifeboats. Although there were enough to get everybody off the Costa Concordia, the tilt of the ship was so severe that many became unusable.
That concept where the lifeboat is lowered down into the water, we've really had that concept for really over 100 years. Lifeboats have got bigger, they have greater capacities, they're more robust, but I really think it needs some out-of-the-box thinking to try and find another way, another means of getting people safely off.
And it's not just the design of the ships that is coming under scrutiny.
I find it very frustrating when people in command and control of these emergency situations have the view that giving information to the passengers may panic them. All the research that's been done in the last 20 years has shown that providing people in emergency situations with the truth and with sufficient information is really essential.
Regulations allow cruises up to 24 hours to give passengers a safety drill. It's a rule that's already being questioned.
The assembly drill needs to be done before the ship leaves port. It's almost a no-brainer. This really needs to be done. Having people running around on board a ship in an emergency situation without having done the drill is a recipe for disaster.
The death toll from the Concordia now stands at 17. With another 16 unaccounted for. The debates about safety continue. In time, lessons will emerge. What is not in doubt is the human cost of this tragedy.
I just want to get the wheels back on the floor. I just want to land, get back in England and never leave it.
I've been trying to find out if everyone's okay and if anyone's injured or missing. And unfortunately, one fellow musician, a member of Entertainment, he's still missing. And one fellow, a violinist, Hungarian, also a fellow member of Entertainment, has been announced as dead.
I just want to sort of just get back to my normal life and get back into a routine, and hopefully I'll be able to like be fine and have a normal life without getting emotional all the time. It's just scary. You just think like life's too short. You've just got to do everything you possibly can in life that you want to do. It can just get taken away.
So new Shameless later tonight, and it's debt collection with a difference for Mickey when a lady starts her labour at 10. Next though, a mum of 13 kids the press have dubbed Britain's most prolific single mother.